Do a talk on basically Foundups and to try to give you a better understanding of the difference between a Foundup and a startup, and the benefits of launching as a Foundup versus a startup. There are over 100 million business ideas a year. Now that's a number I've made up. There's no way to actually quantify that number. Now, but we do know that there are over 14 million business plans submitted. So if there's 14 million business plans submitted, I think we can probably guess that there's probably over 100 million business ideas. Because how many ideas are there, when you're talking to your friends and colleagues, like, oh, I've got this great idea for a business, or oh, this would be a wonderful, it happens all the time. You're at a bar or something else and you're just talking. Talking about ideas is fun. Launching them as a startup is hell. And the reality is only less than 1% actually succeed. If you consider the fact that there are 100 million ideas, and out of those 100 million ideas, 14 million become business plans submitted for funding, from angels to VCs, for banks, whatever. And out of those 14 million, basically 24,000 get pulled out as like, hey, this looks like an interesting project, and they start moving on it. However, certain things fall through, and only about 9,000 actually end up getting the funding or getting built into prototypes. And out of the 9,000, between 2,000 to 3,000 actually make it as viable, successful businesses. Now, those last numbers come from Adeo in a phone interview that I had with him last September. And ultimately, if you want to do a startup, you're making a massive commitment. A massive commitment. What you're committing to is quitting your job. What you're committing to is inviting others to participate in this highly risky, a startup, you talk to anyone, is a highly risky endeavor, right? Why would you, put your family and friends and everyone else in a highly risky endeavor? Well, you really shouldn't, to be honest. And I have a solution, and the solution is a Foundup. Now, Foundup are fun. Foundups are easy. Foundups are laid back. Anyone can do a Foundup. And basically, a Foundup is a founder with an idea for a lean startup, bootstrapping a prototype using our Open Incubator Framework, or OIF. And OIF is spelled O!F. So, you could actually Google O!F, and I'm going to tag all my videos on Foundups with that, so you can just pull them all up really quickly and watch them. Foundups is extensive. It's a completely new framework, a new way, a collaborative way of doing startups and or launching businesses. So the Foundup is a pre-startup. Now, as Socrates, or actually Plato would say, because we don't know if Socrates actually existed, we believe he did, but we don't know him through the writings of Plato. Plato would say, or Socrates as Plato, before you have a discussion, you need to define terms. So you're probably wondering, well, what's your definition of God, I hope it's not too windy, because it's windy right now. What's your definition of a startup? Well, I think I'm the only guy with a real definition of a startup. I don't like Eric Ries's, I don't like anyone else's, I don't like the dictionaries. But let me tell you, I define a startup as a very succinct thing. A startup is a legal entity. Number one, it's a legal entity. A legal entity means it's incorporated. It could be an LLC. It could be a C corp. It could be a S corp. It could be a limited partnership. Whatever. It's a legal entity. Now that's important, because as a legal entity, it's like an individual, you or me, right? It's not. It operates, and secondly, it's a legal entity, doing a highly risky endeavor. That's the startup part. With either a niche customer base right, supporting it, or seed investors willing to invest to get it to its niche customer base in X amount of time. So I'll give it to you again because I kind of broke it up. So a startup is a legal entity with either a niche customer base supporting it financially, right, or seed investors providing financial support to get it to its niche customers in X amount of time. That's a startup. If you do not have that completely, so you could, if you are a legal entity without your niche customers, if you know, if you're not a legal entity with niche customers, right, or if you're just an idea for a lean startup, which basically lean startup basically is lean startup's all about finding your customers, right, and iterating and pivoting until you have a niche group that is funding you, right, then you are a Foundup. So you're probably a Foundup and you don't even realize it, all right? So it's important for us to break, you know, to really differentiate between a Foundup and a startup, because really they're two very different things. And they have very different needs, and they have very different strategies. Now, unfortunately for you, there's only the startup to operate under. So what happens is, you try to launch a business using a framework that isn't basically geared to help you be successful. You see, startups are institution vehicles. What I mean by an institution vehicle is that an institution basically is a group of people engaged in a very specific activity, right? Where only that group is really invited to involve or to be involved. And institutions have very high, you know, basically requirements for, you know, for participation. Not anyone gets invited to be a part of an institution. Try to be a professor at a university, right? They look for a specific kind of person. They look for a specific kind of thing, you know. In regards to the startup institution, they're looking for a team, predominantly. The idea doesn't really matter that much, but really who's involved. And ultimately, they want to know what you're doing, and importantly, do you have customers, right? So with an institution model, it's very hard to break into it, right? It's very hard to be accepted by it. Now, a Foundup is a collaborative model. Now, a collaborative model basically is an open model. And as a Foundup, we don't worry about incorporating. We don't worry about you know, office location, all that stuff. And we basically use a collaborative, viral, virtual network to first identify who our team is going to be, and also to identify whether we can find a customer. And once we identify our team, and once we identify our customer, then we become a startup. So there are no, you know, in a Foundup, there's only two roles. There's the role of the advisor, and there's the role of the team member. That's it. Because it's hard to say, you know, and if you've been involved in a startup, you know that basically you can either, you know, you don't wear just one hat. I mean, you wear multiple hats. And ultimately, as team members, what you're doing is you are helping that Foundup launch as a startup by saying, listen, I want to be part of this, but I'm not willing to quit my job. I'm not willing to take, you know, this high level of risk from myself and my family, but I want to be part of it and help in any way I can by lending my skill set to the project. So you're open it. Now, an advisor basically is someone that says, I'm not interested in being on your project as, you know, as a team member or employee. However, I think what you're doing is interesting enough and has, you know, possibility, and I'm willing to let you use my name. You know, I'm willing to let you use my name and to, you know, to help you build traction, to advise when I can, when I feel like it. And ultimately, if you launch as a startup, I would like an invitation to see your business plan, and I may want to be an investor. You know, provided you have a customer, provided that you have, you know, validated your vision and your mission, and provided that the team member that ultimately become your startup team is, you know, meets my approval. So as you can see, you know, the Foundup methodologies is riskless, right? Versus the startup methodology, which is risky. And, you know, ultimately, the Foundup is all about validating that idea of yours and building traction. Now, you know, I've been an entrepreneur for 16 years, and for those 16 years, I've had one successful Foundup become a startup. And it's hard to measure what success is, right? Because I think, for example, Help Japan Co. is a success. In 1 month, I've raised $35,000 in contributions and corporate pledges. I've built a team. We have significant traction involved, and you know, and we're nearly halfway there to our $100,000 goal. Now, a lot of people, you know, think a user base is success. You know, I think ultimately success is when people start aligning with your idea and your vision. So if people align with your idea and vision and get behind it, that is successful to me as a Foundup. You know, as a startup, really what you're looking for, I think, especially for investor type, success is measured in financial return. And, you know, to be honest, if we were to measure just financial return, then even my Southern Shakespeare Festival that I did, that attracted 30,000 people to a Shakespeare Festival and Renaissance Fair, wouldn't be considered a success. Nonprofits wouldn't be considered a success because they pretty much give their money, they spend their money. So it's you know, success is one of those tricky questions. And it's probably a good question to put out there. What is success for a startup? How do you define success for a startup? So a Foundup basically is a collaborative methodology for bringing together the team, for raising the money, and for launching ideas into startups. And I hope this talk was helpful to you in kind of explaining, you know, and to really summarize again, you know, let me just go back through. A Foundup basically is a collaborative vehicle for launching ideas into startups. It's a methodology that uses what I call the open incubator framework that is based on 16 years of experience that I've developed in launching ideas. I mean, I'm, you know, building prototypes, grabbing teams together, assembling, you know, that's my skill set. And what I'm doing now is actually creating vehicles to do that in a creative way. You know, I'm the guy who I'm changing how LinkedIn works. Instead of using a person as a connection, I'm the first person to set up companies as connections. So the first name of your connection is your company. The second name is whoever is representing it, like me, like this. You know, if you go to Help Japan Co., you search connections, you're going to find the company, and you're going to find the corporate. Now, I'm using LinkedIn as part of the Open Incubator framework for launching ideas. And by basically allowing, using LinkedIn, I'm doing a couple things. One is, in order for a team member or an advisor to participate in the Foundup, they have to initiate that involvement, all right? How many times, or could you have someone listed on a team or whatever, they're really not on the team? When you use LinkedIn, they have to physically say, I am an advisor, I am a team member. That's, not only, that's not only validity, valuation, but that's also, transparent, right? Because I can't abuse that. Number two is, when you set up a corporation in LinkedIn as an entity, right, or a project, you can now then endorse that business by, by getting your constituency and your stakeholders to actually write recommendations as service providers or whatever. And, in doing that, you're building credibility. So as we get endorsements for our initiative going forward, it's providing credibility for those willing to contribute. So check out, when you have a chance, check out LinkedIn Help Japan Co. And if you're a business owner, you may want to, either A, set up a new profile, or B, use your profile. Your first title is your company that you represent, and the second title as, basically your name. So that way, if you still search Michael Trout, it's still going to pop up, right? So this brings up another important point, and that is, what was I going to say? Well, that's 17 minutes already. So anyway, so I hope this talk was, helps to explain the Open Incubator framework, or the Foundup, and versus the Startup, and to explain the difference between the two, and a little bit about the methodology. Obviously, the Open Incubator framework is a lot more in depth than this. I'm just sharing a little bit of it, and our goal is to patent our whole collaborative framework. We've already trademarked, Foundup. So Foundup is really a blue ocean. If you read Blue Ocean Strategy, we're cutting out our own niche within the startup market, and calling it, and really defining it very differently than the startup market. And ultimately, we're looking for partners and other folks to join us in using our branding and using our name. And the first, basically 100 companies will be able to use our brand, our name, and our brand, as partners. So, if you are involved in incubators and other things, and you want to introduce our Foundup methodology, then contact us. My name is Michael Trout. My number is 202-360-4467. That rings in Japan, where I'm at. You can see the cherry blossoms. So cherry blossoms now are all out for this week. They'll be gone by the end of this week. So this is a very special time. And you can email me at mtrout@foundups.com. Thank you.